Let's now take you back to one of our top stories, the maiden visit of recently elected Sri Lankan President Anura Dissanayake to India after he assumed office in September. The tour started on Sunday and will be on till Tuesday, when he'll meet his Indian counterpart and Prime Minister Modi, apart from having other engagements. To talk about it further, we have Ambassador Kumara, former senior diplomat, with us. Good evening to you, Ambassador. What do you make of the prospects of this visit in the context of when it's happening soon after the election, and then, of course, a further strengthening of his hands really through the parliamentary elections as well for Anura Dissanayake?
Thank you very much for having me. No, I think it's a super important visit, Gautam, because this is a leader who actually belongs to the JVP. And most Indian observers will know what kind of party JVP was 25 years ago. So what AKD, as he is known, has done is to really try and emerge from the ashes, as it were. He has reconfigured the political landscape in Sri Lanka. Sri Lanka itself has emerged amazingly from the kind of trouble that it had in 2022 when there were the Aragalia protests and the Sri Lankan presidential palace was stormed. And comparisons are often made between Bangladesh and Sri Lanka as to how the democratic roots are very strong in Sri Lanka and that Sri Lanka has managed to come out. But the point is that India has also helped Sri Lanka enormously. We have been the first responder to Sri Lanka when Sri Lanka faced an enormous economic crisis. The last point I will make is that in the southern flank of India is extremely important. We need to keep it stable. Sri Lanka is the linchpin of our maritime policy, Sagar and neighborhood first policy. There is nothing much you can do about northwest and northeast in India because they continue to be turbulent. But I think the southern flank of India, to keep it peaceful and prosperous, I think Sri Lanka is the linchpin. I'm particularly happy that the new Sri Lankan president has followed his illustrious predecessors by choosing India as the first maiden international visit.
Yes, and how significant is that, considering the kind of situation that Sri Lanka still finds itself? It may have weathered the economic crisis that it faced in 2022 with a lot of help from not just India. India being first responder, of course, did help. There are others who pitched in as well, including the IMF. But even now, it's not completely out of the woods. So what do you think he would be seeking at the moment from India?
No, you are right. Sri Lanka is certainly not out of the woods. I think Sri Lanka looks to India for a couple of things. One, they would like a lot of the loans to be converted to grants. And you will recall that when the External Affairs Minister had gone in November to invite the President of Sri Lanka personally to come to India, and
yes,
he had carried a letter from Prime Minister Modi, $20 million worth of loans were actually converted to grants. I think Sri Lanka would like more of that from India. There will be a review of important projects which are being implemented in Sri Lanka, such as the Kankasenturai port, the Trincomalee oil tank farms, the Colombo terminal, the port terminal, etc. I think most of all, what Sri Lanka needs is India's long-term commitment to economic and financial recovery in India. And that will mean that we will have to then weigh in with the IMF and the World Bank to see that Sri Lanka is helped out. Secondly, we ourselves give them solid support in terms of long-term economic and financial assistance. And finally, the President of Sri Lanka is extremely interested in projects such as the Aadhaar project and the cooperative in Gujarat, that is the Amul cooperative. And he visited those installations when he came in February to India. So I think those are the kind of projects where I think India can lend assistance to Sri Lanka. Sri Lanka is a very literate country. It is true that, as you say, Sri Lanka is going through a problem. But I think if Sri Lanka can demonstrate to South Asia and to the world that despite having a problem, democracy works and that they will be able to come out of this economic problem that they have. I think that will be a very, very welcome development in South Asia, and India would have had a very significant role to play in the re-emergence of Sri Lanka.
Certainly, and India, I'm sure, will be receptive to the kind of assistance, if that's the kind of assistance the Sri Lankan president is seeking. What are India's own keen interests as far as Sri Lanka is concerned? Because it is, of course, the closest maritime neighbor, and there is a tremendous amount of concern there as well to ensure that sea lanes are kept free and freedom of navigation. The rule of law is maintained, in the Indian Ocean region beyond, in the vast beyond Sri Lanka's shores as well.
If you go through the joint statement which was issued after the visit of the External Affairs Minister to Sri Lanka, I found it interesting that, of course, we have committed ourselves always to the territorial integrity and unity of Sri Lanka. But more importantly, the new president of Sri Lanka has committed to the External Affairs Minister and India that Sri Lanka will not allow any forces to operate from Sri Lanka which will be inimical to the security interests of India. So that is the geopolitical importance of Sri Lanka, which abuts the Indian Ocean. As you know, there are concerns that we have about foreign naval vessels which may call in Sri Lankan waters, especially nuclear submarines and those which have the ability to pick up satellite data from southern India. So that concern will be extremely important, Gautam. I think we need to have a clear understanding with Sri Lanka that while we will go all out and help Sri Lanka emerge from the economic problems that they are facing, I think we need some appreciation of our security concerns. My sense is that Sri Lanka will be aware of those security concerns, but I think if the Prime Minister can himself convey those concerns to the Sri Lankan president, that will make a very big difference. Last but not least, I think it's important to understand that without Sri Lanka, it's very difficult to have a southern maritime policy or a sagar, as you call it. Sri Lanka is the linchpin of the sagar policy that we have. Don't forget that we also have the Colombo Security Conclave, which comprises India, Sri Lanka and Maldives. Bangladesh was added later, but of course Bangladesh finds itself in a fair bit of difficulty. But I think if India, Maldives and Sri Lanka, that is the reason why tonight the Sri Lankan president is expected to meet not just the External Affairs Minister, but he's also expected to have a session with the National Security Advisor of India.
All right. And in terms of how there has been, of course, traditional links between India and Sri Lanka, there are people-to-people ties as well. If one wants to take the relationship to the next level, particularly in trade and investment, connectivity has again been an issue that has been pursued in the past as well. Do you think that will remain a big part of the engagement this time around as well?
Oh, absolutely. Connectivity is important for two reasons. One, India provides the bulk of the tourists for Sri Lanka even today. So Sri Lanka will want the tourism sector which had taken a big hit during COVID and then the Aragalia protests. They will want tourism sector to be restored. So nothing better than having Indian tourists in Sri Lanka. The second thing, I think, frankly, from a medium-term perspective, the best outlook that I personally see is to have Sri Lanka integrated economically with southern India. That has been on the anvil for a long time. We are not able to do the comprehensive economic agreement for a variety of political reasons, be that as it may. I think Sri Lanka's best bet is that we must have Sri Lanka integrated with at least the southern India. And if you can have that kind of a regional integration, that would be great for Sri Lanka's economy. It would be good for India. And I think it would be good for the region as well.
Certainly. Let's hope that these things are kept at the foremost when the leaders meet and talk about taking ties forward. Thank you so much for joining us and talking about it, Ambassador Kumar.
Thank you.